There is a kind of tired that no amount of sleep can touch. It's the moment you wake up and feel like the day is already over, even though it hasn't started. You scroll, you sigh, you move through conversations like an actor who forgot why the play matters. People call you lazy, ungrateful, dramatic, but deep down you know that's not it. Something in you is tired of everything. You can't quite explain why. Here's the strange part, that exhaustion might not be a problem to fix, but a message to decode. In the next few minutes, we're going to explore a truth that most people never hear, that your tiredness might be the psyche's intelligent protest against a life that no longer fits you. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why you feel so done with everything, and what this weariness is secretly trying to push you toward. Before we dive in, if you're new here, welcome to Deep Psyche Lab. If you're someone who feels deeply, thinks too much, and wonders why your mind doesn't work like everyone else's, you're in the right place. Take a second now to subscribe to Deep Psyche Lab and tap the notification bell so you don't miss the next deep dive into the hidden layers of your mind. And if you already feel seen in the first minute, gently press the like button. It helps this video find others who are quietly carrying the same weight. One more thing. Right at the start, I'd love for you to anchor yourself in this moment by typing a simple phrase in the comments. I'm tired, but I'm still here. That's it. Because that's the truth. You're still here. And that matters more than you realize. Let's begin with something that might sound unsettling. People who are tired of everything are often people who are painfully awake. Not in the trendy spiritual sense of awake, but in the raw, uncomfortable sense of seeing too much, feeling too much, knowing too much. You notice the emptiness in small talk. You sense the performance in social media. You feel the tension between who you are and who you're supposed to be. And over time, that constant awareness becomes heavy. It doesn't shout. It drains. Have you ever found yourself staring at a wall, a screen, or a ceiling, not because you're lazy, but because your soul feels like a browser with 100 tabs open, none of them interesting, but all of them demanding attention? That's not random. Psychologically, there's a deep pattern there, but we're not going to name it yet. Instead, sit with this question. What if your mind is tired not because it's weak, but because it's been forced to carry too many contradictions at once? Jung once said that people don't suffer from a lack of answers as much as they suffer from a lack of meaning. And that's often the first hidden layer of this tired of everything feeling. On the surface, it looks like apathy, boredom, burnout. But underneath, there's usually some kind of meaning, gap between the life you're living and the life your deeper self knows you could be living. Think about the roles you play every day. The version of you at work, the version of you at home, the version of you online. Jung called this outer mask the persona, the part of you that faces the world, manages impressions, keeps things socially acceptable. The persona isn't fake, it's necessary. But here's the trap. When your persona becomes your prison, the rest of you begins to suffocate. And that suffocation doesn't always show up as a dramatic breakdown. Often it shows up as something quieter. You stop caring. You stop trying. You feel done. Maybe you've noticed this. Things you used to enjoy now feel flat. Conversations that once energized you now feel like noise. Goals you chased for years suddenly look pointless. You might even hear yourself say, I'm just tired of everything. But here's a subtle twist. It's rarely everything. It's usually a very specific something that your psyche is too exhausted to keep pretending about. For some people, that something is a job that never fit their natural rhythm. For others, it's a relationship that drained them slowly, one compromise at a time. For many, it's a lifestyle built around expectations that never matched their authentic values. The psyche can endure that misalignment for a while, but eventually, it revolts, not always with anger. But with numbness, we tend to think of rebellion as loud, arguments, dramatic endings, radical decisions. But one of the psyche's most powerful rebellions is quiet refusal. Not the empowered no we celebrate, but a deeper, almost involuntary shutting down. You stop being able to force yourself. You can't fake enthusiasm anymore. You watch your own life from a distance, like you're behind glass. It's terrifying, and yet, underneath that fear, there's something weirdly honest about it. Have you ever felt that? That feeling of watching yourself go through the motions, thinking, I used to care about this. Why don't I anymore? It's like your inner world has pulled its energy back, refusing to power the persona any longer. Jung would say, the unconscious is withdrawing its libido, its life energy from an old pattern that no longer has meaning. It feels like exhaustion. It is actually redirection. But before we talk about where that energy wants to go, we have to explore something more uncomfortable, the secret rage of the exhausted person. On the surface, when you're tired of everything, you might seem calm. You're not shouting, you're not throwing things, you're just done. But if we go deeper, there's often a layer of anger that never learned how to show itself. Not the kind of anger that explodes outward, but the kind that collapses inward. You weren't allowed to say no. You weren't allowed to set limits. You weren't allowed to disappoint people. So your psyche found the one form of resistance that no one could argue with. You stopped having energy. This is where I'm tired becomes code for so many things that never got words. I'm tired can mean I can't carry this alone anymore. Can mean I'm tired of pretending this. Doesn't hurt. Can mean I'm tired of doing what I'm supposed to do and never what I actually want over time. If those messages are ignored, the exhaustion spreads. Everything feels heavy. Even small tasks feel like climbing a mountain with no summit. If any part of this is resonating, take a breath. Place your attention for a moment on your chest, your throat, your stomach, wherever you tend to feel your emotions. Notice what comes up when I say this. Your exhaustion is not a character flaw. It is a language. And if you stay with this video, we're going to decode more of that language together. Right now. If you're willing, let the algorithm know there are people who need this kind of depth. Tap the like button. It seems small, but it helps Deep Psyche Lab reach others who are quietly shutting down inside and don't have words for it yet. Let's look at another dimension of people who are tired of everything. Their relationship with time. There's a peculiar way that time moves when you're exhausted. Days can feel both painfully long and strangely empty. You might catch yourself thinking, how is it only 3 p.m.? And then how is it already October? Your moment-to-moment experience drags, but the years vanish. This paradox is not random. Psychologically, it often signals that you're living in a life pattern that no longer feels like your own story. Jung believed that humans don't just want happiness, they want meaning. And meaning usually comes from feeling that we are part of a story that matters. When you're tired of everything, it's often because your current story doesn't feel like it belongs to you. You might be living the story your family wanted, the story your culture rewarded, the story your younger self chose for survival, not fulfillment. And now, the psyche is quietly refusing to invest emotional energy into a plot that no longer makes sense. Here's where it gets interesting. Many people who are tired of everything also have a very rich inner life. They might daydream constantly. They replay conversations in their head. They imagine alternative futures, different identities, parallel lives. On the outside, this can look like zoning out or procrastinating. On the inside, something else is happening. Your unconscious is testing new stories. Imagine a theater behind your eyes, where dozens of you are trying on different roles: the one who leaves the job, the one who moves to another city, the one who finally sets boundaries with family, the one who chooses rest for the first time without guilt. These aren't silly fantasies. They're your psyche's rehearsals for a different way of being. But if those rehearsals never influence your actual life, the tension between inner and outer grows. And that tension feels like exhaustion. This is why simple advice like just push through, or just think positive, can feel almost insulting when you're in this state. It ignores the depth of what's actually happening. You're not just tired from lack of sleep. You're tired from carrying unlived lives inside you, with no bridge to bring any of them into reality. Let's add another layer. Jung talked about the shadow, the parts of ourselves we deny, repress. or disown because they don't fit who we think we're supposed to be. People who are tired of everything are often shadow-heavy. They've spent years hiding their anger, their desires, their sadness, their need for rest, their creativity, their sensitivity. They learned, sometimes very young, that their real feelings were inconvenient, so they buried them. But the shadow doesn't disappear. It just works from underground. Eventually, all that repressed emotion becomes weight. It doesn't always come out as drama or meltdown. Often, it leaks out as I can't focus. You can't care. You can't imagine a different future with any real energy. This is the shadow's quiet revenge. You can ignore your truth, but you cannot ignore the cost forever. Maybe you recognize yourself in this. You've become expert at functioning. You show up. You answer messages. You meet deadlines. You smile when you're supposed to. And yet, there's a part of you that wants to disappear for a year, turn off your phone, and not explain yourself to anyone. That fantasy of vanishing isn't always about wanting to die. Often, it's about wanting to rest from the performance of being the person everyone thinks you are. If you've ever fantasized about packing a bag and just leaving, or about time freezing so you don't have to do anything for a while, that's not childish escapism. It's a symbolic image. In Jungian terms, it's an archetypal longing for the retreat of the hermit, the pilgrimage of the wanderer, the silence of the monk. Your deep self is asking for a pause in the noise so something truer can be heard. But when that pause is not possible externally, the psyche tries to create it internally through shutdown. Let's zoom in on one specific pattern, the way you might feel both numb and overly sensitive at the same time. You're scrolling half bored, half overwhelmed. Nothing really moves you, but everything irritates you. A stranger's comment online, a friend's casual remark, a piece of bad news, things that might barely register on someone else's radar feel like sandpaper against your nervous system. How can you be so over it and yet so easily agitated? Again, this is not random. From a depth psychology perspective, numbness and hypersensitivity often travel together. The numbness is like a blanket over deep, unprocessed emotion. The hypersensitivity is that emotion leaking out sideways at small triggers. You're not reacting to just this moment. You're reacting to a backlog. And because you're already so tired, any added stress feels like too much. At this point, you might be wondering, is this depression? Is this burnout? Is this trauma? It might be some of those things. But here in this video, we're going to stay with something slightly different. Not clinical labels, but patterns of meaning. Labels can be helpful, but they can also flatten nuance. For now, let's hold this idea. Your tiredness is not just a symptom. It's a signal. It points somewhere. If you're still with me, I want you to know something. Your attention is precious. In a world that keeps trying to hijack it, the fact that you've given it to a long, slow exploration like this says something important about you. You're not apathetic. You crave depth. You're just exhausted from trying to find it in places that can't offer it. If that feels true, and you haven't yet, subscribe to Deep Psyche Lab so you have a consistent place to come back to when you need this kind of depth. And say hi in the comments with, "I'm tired, but I'm still here." Just as a way of acknowledging to yourself that, despite everything, part of you is still listening. Let's now look at another core piece of the psychology of people who are tired of everything: their history with responsibility. Many of the most exhausted people were forced to grow up too early. Maybe you were the emotionally responsible one in your family, the one who had to stay calm while others fell apart. Maybe you were the high achiever, the golden child whose value came from performance. Maybe you were the quiet one who learned to anticipate everyone's needs so there would be less conflict. If you grew up like that, your body learned a habit: always be on. Scan the environment. Prepare yourself. Be ready. Do not fail. Do not drop the ball. That state of constant vigilance can become so normal that you don't even notice it until your system starts failing to keep up. Suddenly, tasks that used to be easy feel impossible. You miss deadlines. You stop replying. You let dishes pile up. You feel guilty, but you also feel strangely relieved. It's as if some inner part of you is finally putting the bags down in the middle of the hallway and refusing to move. In Jungian terms, we might say that your inner hero has been overworking. The heroic archetype is the part of us that pushes through, conquers, achieves. It's important. But when the hero runs your whole life, your inner child, your artist, your lover, your mystic, those softer, slower archetypes begin to starve. And when they starve long enough, they stop sending polite requests. They pull the plug. This is one of the most misunderstood things about exhaustion. People think you're being lazy or irresponsible when you stop doing everything. But often what's happening is a forced rebalancing. The psyche is trying to protect the neglected parts of you by reducing energy to the overused parts. It's saying, if you won't stop, I will make you. Let that sink in. Your exhaustion might be your psyche saving your life in slow motion. Another important aspect. Here is how people who are tired of everything relate to hope. On the outside, they might seem pessimistic. They shrugged at good news. They deflect encouragement. They say things like, it won't change anything, or what's the point? But underneath that apparent hopelessness, there's often a very sensitive, almost sacred relationship with hope that has been repeatedly betrayed. Imagine a child who gets excited about something, a trip, a promise, a surprise, only to have it canceled again and again. Eventually, that child stops showing excitement. Not because they no longer want good things, but because hope has become dangerous. It hurts to hope. It hurts to lift your head and get it chopped off over and over. So the psyche develops a defense. Don't expect anything. Don't care. Tired. Stay low. If this resonates, it's not that you truly believe nothing good can ever happen. It's that you're trying not to be hurt by hope again. You protect yourself by pretending you're already over it. In depth psychology, we might see this as a kind of defensive nihilism, not a genuine belief that nothing matters, but a shield against disappointment. But here's the paradox. That shield also blocks meaning. You can't selectively numb. When you lower your expectations to avoid pain, you also flatten your capacity for joy. You become tired of everything because everything feels equally gray. Nothing seems worth the effort. It's safer not to want, so what does your psyche want instead? If it is sabotaging your ability to push through, what is it asking for? Let's slow down here. Imagine your exhaustion as a character sitting across from you. Maybe they look like a younger version of you, slumped and quiet. Maybe they look like an ancient, tired figure, eyes wise but heavy. If this character could speak, what would they say? Not in dramatic quotes, but in simple human words. I don't want to be strong anymore. Tired of pretending? I want someone to notice I'm not. Okay, I want to rest without being judged. Want a life that doesn't feel like I'm constantly betraying myself. Those wishes are not selfish. They're sane. And they can give us clues to what kind of life would actually restore your energy. People who are tired of everything often need three things. Psychologically, even if they never say them out loud. Authenticity, slowness, and meaning. Authenticity in the sense of not having to wear such a heavy mask all the time. Slowness in the sense of not always being rushed, scheduled, optimized. Meaning in the sense of feeling that their pain past and present feeds something larger than just surviving another week. Without authenticity, you burn out from constantly editing yourself. Without slowness, your nervous system never completes a full exhale. Without meaning, your efforts feel like pushing a rock up a hill that resets every Monday at this point. You might be thinking, okay, that sounds nice. But I can't just quit my job or disappear into the forest. That's true. Most of us can't radically change everything overnight. But inside this video, I'm not going to ask you to do anything extreme. Instead, I want to offer you a different way of seeing your tiredness that can, over time, shift how you move through your life, even before anything changes on the outside. First, consider this. You are allowed to believe your exhaustion. So many people in this state gaslight themselves. Maybe I'm just being dramatic. Other people have it worse. I shouldn't feel this way. But The psyche doesn't waste energy sending such a loud signal for no reason. Trust that you are tired for a reason even if you don't know that reason yet. Second, try to notice where your tiredness fluctuates, even slightly. Are there moments when you feel a tiny spark? Maybe when you're alone and reading something that truly interests you. Maybe when you're talking to someone who doesn't require you to perform. Maybe when you're outside, away from screens, and you feel your body loosen by 2%. Those tiny variations in energy are like compass needles. They point toward what your psyche finds less draining, more truthful. From a Jungian view, these small sparks are often the voice of the self, the deeper organizing center of your personality is trying to pull you toward a more aligned life. Your exhaustion pulls away from what is false. Your tiny sparks pull you toward what is real. Together, they form a map. If any line in this video has helped you name something that felt blurry before, let me know in the comments with, "I'm starting to understand my tiredness." It may feel small, but even that act of naming is a form of self-respect. Let's explore one more psychological dimension: how people who are tired of everything handle relationships. When you're in this state, social interaction can feel confusing. On one hand, you might crave connection deeply. On the other hand, even simple messages feel like tasks. You might leave people on read, not because you don't care, but because you don't have the energy to respond correctly. Might avoid making plans because the idea of committing to anything feels overwhelming. Others may interpret this as disinterest or rejection, but internally, it often feels more like, I want to be with people, but I don't know how to do it without abandoning myself, and you're already exhausted. The idea of editing your words, managing the other person's emotions, being on all of that can feel impossible. So you retreat. Not because you hate people, but because you can't afford the psychological cost. This can create a painful loop. You isolate to protect your energy, but isolation deepens your sense of emptiness, which increases your tiredness, which makes connection harder, and so on. Breaking that loop doesn't start with forcing yourself to go to every social event. It often starts with finding even one place, one person, one community, one space where you're allowed to show up as you are, tired and all, without pressure to perform. If this video can be one of those spaces, even in a small way, then let it be that. You're not here to impress anyone. You're here to recognize yourself. I want to speak now to a quieter part of you, the part that might be thinking, what if this is just who I am? What if I'm just a tired person forever? That thought can feel like a life sentence. But from a depth psychology lens, the psyche is not static. It moves in phases, cycles, seasons. Jung talked about the first half of life and the second half of life, not in terms of age, but in terms of orientation. In the first half, we build identity, career, relationships, persona. We adapt to the outer world. In the second, if we are lucky, we start turning inward, asking who we really are beneath the roles, what our soul wants, what our life means beyond expectations. The transition between these halves is rarely clean. Often it shows up as a profound tiredness with everything that no longer feels genuine. So what if your exhaustion is not the end of you, but the edge of a new chapter? In myths and fairy tales, there's often a moment when the hero collapses. They're injured, lost, or stuck in the underworld. They can't keep going the way they have been. And it's in that lowest point, when they are forced to stop, that they meet a guide, receive a gift, or notice a hidden path they would have missed while rushing. Your tiredness may be that underworld moment. You have descended. Now, the question is, what will you see down here that you couldn't see up there? Perhaps the guide, for now, is simply your own honesty. The gift is the ability to stop lying to yourself about what hurts. The hidden path might be a small, seemingly insignificant change that shifts the entire story over time, going to bed when your body asks, instead of when your productivity app allows. Telling one person, I'm not okay. Carving out 10 minutes a day for something that nourishes you even if no one else sees it. None of this is glamorous. It won't make a cinematic montage. But it's in these small, quiet acts that the psyche begins to trust you again. And as it trusts you, it may slowly return some of the energy it had withdrawn. I want to be very clear. This video is not saying, just think differently and you'll be fine. There are real circumstances, chronic stress, poverty, oppression, illness that drain energy in ways psychology alone cannot solve. Your environment matters. Your history matters. Your body matters. But even within those constraints, understanding the symbolic meaning of your tiredness can be a powerful form of self-compassion. Instead of seeing yourself as broken, you start to see yourself as someone whose psyche has been too loyal for too long to things that hurt. So here's a small invitation as we move toward the close. Tonight, if you can, sit quietly for a few minutes before bed and ask yourself, where in my life am I most pretending? Don't rush for an answer. Let it rise slowly. It might show you a specific situation, a relationship, a habit, a persona. Whatever comes up, just acknowledge it without judgment. That acknowledgement alone is a crack in the wall of I'm fine. And through that crack, energy can eventually return. If this episode has given you language for your fatigue, or if you felt even one moment of, oh, that's me, I'd love for you to write in the comments. I'm ready to listen to my tiredness. Not to fight it, not to shame it, but to listen. We've covered a lot together. How exhaustion can be the psyche's protest against a life that no longer fits. How shadow, persona, meaning, and unprocessed emotion all weave into this experience of being tired of everything. How your fantasy of disappearing might actually be a symbolic call for rest, authenticity, and a slower, more truthful life. We've looked at how your relationship with responsibility, hope, and relationships can shape this tiredness. And we've reframed your exhaustion not as a personal failure, but as a strange form of inner wisdom. If you remember only one line from this whole video, let it be this: your tiredness is not the end of your story. It is the part of your story where something in you refuses to go any further without you. Take a breath with that. This channel is educational and not a substitute for therapy. If you found this episode helpful, if you felt seen, or if it helped you understand even one small part of yourself, please take a moment to like this video. It's a small gesture on your side, but it really does help Deep Psyche Lab reach more people who are silently struggling with the same invisible weight. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Tell me, in your own words, what your tiredness has been trying to say. And if you're not ready to share details, you can simply write, I'm ready to listen to my tiredness as your quiet declaration to yourself, if you haven't yet. Subscribe to Deep Psyche Lab for more deep mind stories, Jung-inspired reflections, and psychological explorations like this. Tap the notification bell so you don't miss future episodes. We're building a space here for people who feel deeply and think in layers. Just like you, thank you for spending this time with me, for letting your inner world be seen. Even if only in the privacy of your headphones or your room. Take care of your mind, be gentle with your nervous system, and remember, even in your most exhausted moments, there is a part of you that is still watching, still listening, still quietly guiding you toward something more honest. Until next time, this is Deep Psyche Lab. Rest, reflect, and I'll meet you in the next episode.